America, The Untold History Episode 1 The Birth of a Continent Opening hook, 0 to 045, SFX, Cold Wind Howling. A distant wolf howls. A slow cinematic orchestra begins. Narrator, 20,000 years ago, the world was a very different place. Much of the northern hemisphere was buried beneath massive sheets of ice. Oceans had receded, coastlines were unrecognizable, and the map of Earth looked nothing like it does today. But hidden within that frozen world, a bridge appeared, a bridge that would begin one of the greatest human journeys in history. The people who crossed it had no idea where they were going. They could never have imagined that thousands of years later, this land would become home to one of the most powerful nations on Earth. This is the story of how America began. Scene 1 The Frozen World, 0:45 to 2 o'clock, visual, An endless frozen landscape. Snowstorms sweep across the land. Mammoths, bison, and Ice Age predators roam the icy plains. Narrator, around 20,000 years ago, Earth was in the grip of the last ice age. So much of the planet's water was locked inside glaciers that sea levels dropped dramatically. Between what is now Siberia and Alaska, a vast stretch of land emerged. Historians call it Beringia. Today, it lies beneath the waters of the Bering Strait. But back then, people could simply walk across it. Scene 2 Into the Unknown, 2 o'clock to 3:30, visual, small groups of hunter-gatherer families slowly cross the frozen land. Men carry stone spears. Women protect children. Everyone presses forward despite the bitter cold. Narrator, these were not conquerors. They were not kings. They were ordinary people, hunters, families, survivors. Following herds of animals in search of food, they unknowingly stepped into an entirely new world. They carried no maps, no compass, no knowledge of what lay ahead, only courage, and the instinct to survive. With every step they took, they were quietly writing the first chapter of America's story. Scene 3 A New World, 3:30 to 5 o'clock, visual, dense forests, winding rivers, towering mountains, and vast grasslands. Families fish in rivers, light fires, and build simple shelters. Narrator, the new land was unlike anything they had ever seen. Endless forests, powerful rivers, towering mountains, and wildlife beyond imagination. Over generations, these first settlers spread across the continent. They learned the land, adapted to changing climates, built communities, created languages, developed traditions, and over thousands of years, hundreds of unique indigenous nations emerged. Long before Europeans ever arrived, America was already home to thriving cultures, deep knowledge, and remarkable civilizations. Ending, 5 o'clock to 5:40, visual, The camera slowly rises above the continent and turns toward the vast Atlantic Ocean. Narrator, but across the ocean, in another part of the world, powerful kingdoms were preparing for voyages that would change history forever. A single journey would reshape an entire continent. The year, 1492. In the next episode, we uncover why Europe searched for a new route across the sea, and how that search changed the fate of America forever. America, The Untold History Episode 2 The Civilizations Before Columbus Opening hook, 0 to 0:45, SFX, Deep Cinematic Drums. Birds echo through a dense jungle. The sound of a stone temple emerging through the mist. Narrator, for centuries, the world believed that Christopher Columbus discovered America. But that story is incomplete. Long before European ships appeared on the horizon, millions of people were already living here. They built cities, raised pyramids, created calendars that tracked the stars, established trade networks stretching thousands of miles. This was not an empty land. It was a world of powerful civilizations. Today, we uncover the America that existed before Columbus. Scene 1 A continent full of life, 0:45 to 2 o'clock, visual, A sunrise over forests, rivers, deserts, and mountains. Villages flourish across the continent as smoke rises from homes and children play. Narrator, By 10,000 years ago, humans had spread across nearly every corner of North America. Generation after generation, they adapted to every environment imaginable. Some lived among frozen Arctic landscapes. Others thrived in endless grasslands. Many settled beside rivers and fertile valleys. Over thousands of years, hundreds of indigenous nations developed their own languages, beliefs, seen to the rise of great civilizations. 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, massive stone cities rise from tropical forests. Farmers cultivate cornfields. Priests observe the stars from towering temples. Narrator, asterisk, as centuries passed, simple villages transformed into extraordinary civilizations. In Central America, the Maya built magnificent cities filled with towering pyramids. They became masters of mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. Their calendars could predict celestial events with astonishing accuracy. Farther north, powerful societies built ceremonial mounds, thriving towns, and vast trading networks. Across the continent, corn, beans, and squash became the foundation of agriculture. Communities flourished. Trade expanded. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. America was already alive with innovation. Hash seen 3 masters of the land, 4 o'clock to 5:30. Asterisk, visual, asterisk, asterisk hunters tracking bison across open plains. Fishermen casting nets into rivers. Craftsmen carving wood and shaping pottery. Narrator, asterisk, life depended on understanding nature. The forests, the rivers, the changing seasons. Every tribe developed its own way of surviving. Some followed migrating buffalo across the Great Plains. Others became expert fishermen along the Pacific coast. Many cultivated fertile fields that fed entire communities. Their knowledge of the land was passed down through stories, songs, and tradition. For thousands of years, these societies lived, traded, celebrated, and evolved. Hash seen 4 apiece before the storm, 5:30 to 6:30. Asterisk, visual, asterisk, asterisk, children laugh as families gather around evening fires. The camera slowly pulls back toward the Atlantic Ocean. Narrator, asterisk, for countless generations, this continent belonged to its first peoples. Its future seemed certain, but beyond the horizon, across a vast and unpredictable ocean, another world was changing. Powerful European kingdoms were searching for wealth, new trade routes, and glory. They had no idea that their search would lead him here. And when they arrived, nothing would ever be the same. Hash ending, 6:30 to 7 o'clock, asterisk, visual, asterisk, asterisk, 3 wooden sailing ships disappear into the mist as dramatic orchestral music rises. Narrator, asterisk, the next chapter begins with a dream, a dangerous voyage, and a sailor determined to reach Asia by sailing west. His name, Christopher Columbus. His journey would change history forever. America, The Untold History ** Episode 3 The Voyage That Changed the World, 1492, *# Opening Hook, 0:100 to 0:45, *SFX, Powerful Ocean Waves. Wooden ships creak in the wind. Slow cinematic orchestra builds, Narrator, history is often changed, not by armies, but by a single decision. In the late 15th century, Europe was desperate. The riches of Asia, silk, spices, gold, and precious stones, were worth fortunes. But the traditional trade routes had become expensive and dangerous. Then one man proposed an impossible idea. What if we sail west, to reach the east? Most people laughed. A few called him insane. But one queen was willing to take the risk. His name was Christopher Columbus, and his voyage would change the world forever. Scene 1 Europe's desire for wealth, 0:45 to 2 o'clock, visual, bustling markets in Europe. Merchants trading silk and spices. Kings studying maps inside royal palaces. Narrator, in the 1400s, Europe was hungry for wealth. Pepper, cinnamon, silk, these luxury goods came from Asia and were worth more than gold. But reaching Asia meant crossing dangerous land routes controlled by powerful empires. Every journey was costly, every shipment was risky. European kingdoms dreamed of finding a faster and cheaper route. Whoever found it could become the richest nation on earth. Scene 2 Columbus's bold idea, 2 o'clock to 3:30, visual, Christopher Columbus spreads maps across a wooden table, explaining his plan to skeptical nobles. Narrator, asterisk, Christopher Columbus believed the Earth was round. That idea itself was already known among many educated Europeans. But Columbus made a dangerous mistake. He greatly underestimated the size of the Earth. He believed Asia was much closer than it actually was. His plan was simple: sail west across the Atlantic Ocean and arrive in Asia. Most rulers rejected his proposal. They believed the voyage would fail. Years passed. Then, the rulers of Spain finally agreed. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella decided to finance his expedition. It was one of the most important investments in history. Scene 3 into the unknown, 3:30 to 5:30. Asterisk, visual, asterisk, asterisk, 3 ships leave the Spanish port at sunrise, asterisk, Nina, asterisk, 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 Pinta, asterisk, asterisk, and asterisks, narrator, asterisk, on August 3, 1492. 3 small ships left Spain. The asterisk, asterisk, Nina, asterisk, the asterisk, asterisk, Pinta, asterisk, asterisk, and the flagship, the asterisk, asterisk, Santa Maria, asterisk, asterisk. There were no GPS satellites, no weather forecasts, no rescue teams, only the stars, the wind, and hope. As the weeks passed, the endless ocean tested every sailor. Food began to run low. Fresh water became scarce. Many feared they would never return. Some even demanded that Columbus turn back, but he refused. He believed land was close. Scene 4, land. 5:30 to 6:30, asterisk, visual, asterisk. A sailor climbs the mast before sunrise. Suddenly he points toward the horizon. Sailor, shouting, asterisk, asterisk, land, asterisk. Narrator, asterisk, on October 12, 1492. After more than 2 months at sea, land finally appeared. Columbus believed he had reached islands near Asia. He was wrong. He had arrived in the Caribbean, a world completely unknown to Europeans. He called the local people Indians because he mistakenly believed he was in the Indies. That misunderstanding would remain for centuries. Scene 5, the first encounter, 6:30 to 7:30, asterisk, visual, asterisk. The indigenous people cautiously approached the Europeans. They exchanged gifts while watching each other with curiosity. Narrator, asterisk, the first meeting was peaceful. The indigenous people welcomed the strangers with curiosity. They shared food, water, and gifts. But neither side understood the future that awaited. For the native peoples, everything was about to change. Not just because of new visitors, but because those visitors would soon bring soldiers, settlers, diseases, and empires. Ending, 7:30 to 8 o'clock, asterisk, visual, asterisk. The camera rises above the Caribbean as dozens of European ships appear on the distant horizon. Narrator, asterisk, Columbus believed he had discovered a new route to Asia. Instead, he had opened the door to an entirely new chapter of human history. Within a few decades, powerful European empires would race across the Atlantic. They came seeking gold, land, and power. In the next episode, the conquest of the New World begins. America, The Untold History ** Episode 4 The Conquest of the New World, 1493 to 1600, *# Opening Hook, 000 to 045, *SFX, Thunder Over the Ocean. Church bells. Dozens of sailing ships cutting through the Atlantic. Epic orchestral music rises. Narrator, Christopher Columbus returned to Spain as a hero. He believed he had found a new route to Asia. Instead, he had revealed an entirely unknown continent to Europe. Within months, the greatest race for land, wealth, and power in history had begun. Spain, Portugal, France, England, all turned their eyes west. The New World was no longer a mystery. It had become the greatest prize on earth. Scene 1 Spain's Golden Dream, 0:45 to 2 o'clock, visual, The Royal Court of Spain. Gold ornaments are displayed before King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. New maps of the Atlantic are spread across a table. Narrator, the stories brought back by Columbus spread across Europe. Rumors spoke of islands rich in gold, untouched lands, and millions of people who had never seen Europeans before. Spain moved first. Ship after ship crossed the Atlantic. Not only explorers, but soldiers, missionaries, farmers, and settlers. Their mission was simple: claim the land, spread Christianity, and bring unimaginable wealth back to Spain. Scene 2 Empires collide, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, asterisk, visual, asterisk, asterisk Spanish soldiers march through tropical forests. Indigenous villages watch from a distance. Tension fills the air. Narrator, asterisk, for the indigenous peoples. The arrival of Europeans was unlike anything they had ever experienced. Steel swords, horses, cannons, firearms. These technologies were completely unfamiliar to most native communities. Some tribes welcomed the newcomers. Others resisted. Many tried to negotiate, but conflict soon became unavoidable. Entire civilizations found themselves facing enemies they had never imagined. Scene 3 The Invisible Enemy, 4 o'clock to 5:30, asterisk, visual, asterisk. A thriving indigenous village slowly becomes silent. Fires burn low. Families gather around the sick. Narrator, asterisk, yet the deadliest weapon carried by Europeans was one they could not even see. Diseases, smallpox, measles, influenza. The indigenous peoples had no immunity to these illnesses. Communities that had survived for thousands of years were devastated within a single generation. Historians estimate that disease caused the deaths of millions of indigenous people across the Americas. It remains one of the greatest demographic disasters in human history. Scene 4 A new map of the world, 5:30 to 6:45, asterisk, visual, asterisk, asterisk, animated maps show span. As Spain expanded, other European powers refused to stay behind. Portugal claimed lands to the south. France explored vast river systems. England searched for places to build permanent colonies. The Atlantic Ocean became a highway of exploration. Every voyage redrew the map of the world. Every new settlement pushed the frontier farther inland. The age of global empires had begun. Scene 5 The beginning of colonial America, 645 to 745, wooden settlements rise along the coast. Ships unload supplies as forests are cleared for farms. By the end of the 16th century, European settlements were taking root across the Americas. New towns appeared, trade expanded, colonial governments formed. But beneath this growth, conflict continued. The struggle over land, resources, and power would shape the next several centuries of history. The foundation of colonial America had been laid. Ending, 745 to 815, a lone English ship sails toward the eastern coast of North America as the music builds to a dramatic finish. The race to control the New World had only just begun. Soon, England would establish colonies that would one day challenge the greatest empire on Earth. Those colonies would eventually become the United States of America. Next episode, asterisk, the 13 colonies, the birth of British America. America, the Untold History. Episode 5 The 13 Colonies, the birth of British America, 1607 to 1733, opening hook, 000 to 045, ocean waves. Seagulls, the sound of axes cutting trees. Slow cinematic orchestral music begins. Spain had claimed vast empires. France controlled enormous territories. But England had a different vision. It wasn't looking for gold alone. It wanted something far more valuable. A permanent home, a new beginning. Across the Atlantic, on the eastern coast of North America, a handful of fragile settlements would grow into 13 colonies. No one knew it then, but these small colonies would one day become the birthplace of the United States of America. Scene 1 The first permanent English colony, 1607, 045 to 215, 3 English ships arrive at the shores of Virginia. Colonists step onto the muddy riverbank carrying tools, seeds, and muskets. In the spring of asterisk 1607, around 100 English settlers reached the coast of Virginia. They founded a settlement they named asterisk Jamestown asterisk, the first permanent English colony in North America. Life here was far from easy. The settlers faced hunger, disease, harsh winters, and an unfamiliar land. Many died during the first few years. Some historians even call this period the starving time. Jamestown nearly disappeared before it truly began. Scene 2 A colony fights to survive. 215 to 345, settlers build wooden houses and defensive walls while others struggle to grow crops. The early colonists had expected to find gold. Instead, they found hardship. Food was scarce. Clean water was limited. Relations with nearby indigenous communities shifted between trade and conflict. Everything changed when tobacco farming became profitable. The colony finally found an economic lifeline. Ships returned to England loaded with tobacco. Money began to flow, and Jamestown survived. Scene 3 The Pilgrims and the Mayflower, 1620, 345 to 530, the ship Mayflower battles violent Atlantic storms before reaching the rocky coast of New England. Just 13 years later, another famous voyage crossed the Atlantic. In 1620, a group known as the Pilgrims sailed aboard the Mayflower Unlike earlier settlers, they weren't searching for gold. They were searching for religious freedom. After a difficult voyage, they landed in present-day Massachusetts. Before stepping ashore, they signed an agreement called the Mayflower Compact It became one of the earliest examples of self-government in English America. Scene 4 The 13 colonies take shape, 5:30 to 7 o'clock. An animated map gradually lights up as colonies appear one by one along the Atlantic coast. Over the next century, England continued sending settlers across the Atlantic. One colony became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became 13. Each colony developed its own economy, its own government, its own identity. The northern colonies focused on fishing, shipbuilding, and trade. The middle colonies became centers of farming and commerce. The southern colonies relied on vast plantations producing tobacco, rice, and later, cotton. Together, these 13 colonies stretched along the eastern coast of North America. Scene 5 A new society emerges, 7 o'clock to 8:15, busy colonial towns. Schools, churches, markets, blacksmiths, and ships arriving from Europe. By the early 1700s, the colonies were growing rapidly. Families arrived from England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, and many local assemblies gave colonists experience in governing themselves. Yet one difficult reality also became deeply rooted. The system of enslaved African labor expanded across many colonies, especially in the South. It helped fuel economic growth, but at an enormous human cost. The consequences of slavery would shape American history for centuries. Ending, 8:15 to 9 o'clock, the camera slowly pulls away from the 13 colonies. Across the Atlantic, the British flag waves over London. Narrator, the colonies were growing stronger every year, but they were still subjects of the British Crown. Soon, new taxes, new laws, and growing tensions would push these loyal colonies toward rebellion. The question was no longer whether they could survive. The question was whether they would remain loyal to Britain.